Welcome to this edition of the Hoel Roofing and Remodeling Podcast. Today I'm excited. I want to introduce our special guest, Miss Jenna Lawler from the Rushville FFA Chapter. She's president. I'm going to butcher her last name. I hate that because everybody knows my last name. People butcher that too. But take a minute, introduce yourself. Of course, how to pronounce your name right. But what activities you're in. Of course, I know FFA. Just kind of an introduction, and we'll get started from there.
All right. Hello, my name is Jenna Lawler, and I am a sophomore at RCHS, and I'm serving as the 2023 term president of the Rushville FFA Chapter, along with Meredith Irwin, I got to get my fingers out to count, Elijah Snow, Emma Trussler, who else? Emma Hedrick, 2 Emmas, very fun, Harley Weber, and there's one more. Did I say Andy Berkemeyer? There's her, too.
Andy's a girl?
Yeah.
So there's no boys?
It's Andrea Berkemeyer. Yeah, it's actually an all-girls team. Yeah.
Wow.
Really, really exciting.
Is there any boys left in the FFA?
There's a lot. They just don't run for office as much anymore. Huh. We had one last year at chapter office, and we actually have a few guys in our green hand team, but otherwise it's all girls.
Brody's helped me. I love Brody. He's a good kid. I saw that.
Both of them are. Brody Owens and Terrell.
Okay. Terrell is who I'm talking about. And then that's crazy you say Emma Trussler, because when I was in FFA, I worked for her dad and mom at her grandpa's dairy farm. So that's making me feel really old right now. Yeah. So that she's old enough to be an FFA officer.
Full circle, right?
Because, was she born? Oh, wow. That's how long ago it's been since I worked for them.
Probably 07 she was born,
Yeah. So she wasn't, because I graduated in 05. It was before I graduated. So, that's going to date me a little bit. But so FFA officer as a sophomore or president, that's awesome. When I was a sophomore, I was a sentinel. Been a few years. But, just let's talk a little bit about like what the FFA is up to. What new things are going, like some things you got out of it. One thing, not a shameless plug for us, but we did sponsor the state convention.
Oh, yeah, that was so
maybe
fun.
If you want to talk about state convention a little bit, that's great. But just, I know FFA Week's coming up here soon.
Oh, yes.
And just talk about that.
Big
And,
plans.
Just let us know how, like, us as a company can continue to support you guys. Mr. Orm's great over there. And, how the community can support you, too.
So, like you said, you guys sponsored state convention, and that was really, really eye-opening for me. It was actually my first convention where I got to compete in competitions. So it felt like I had earned a spot to go, and it felt really rewarding to be able to attend all of the days because of your guys' generous offer and donation. And I think it really impacts our FFA chapter because there's a lot of chapters that don't have that support, and unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to finances. If the kids can't afford to go, they don't end up going, whether they're competing or not. And that's just so sad, So it's really fun when we get to have, 20 to 40 members show up to state convention and be able to go and do all the fun activities, learn about leadership, and grow into their true selves, and evolve, I like to say, because you're not really changing, you're just evolving who you are, and growing into a more independent person. And I think that people like you and your company that sponsor us, those are the people that we look to when we're trying to create and develop our own companies, or when we're looking at a career, like what do we want to go into next? And we see the support that you guys offer, and that's definitely something that we see with FFA. The more that the companies come back is the companies that we tend to have members go to, and the companies style that we tend to have our members adapt to. And I think that is really impactful for not only our members but also the community to see that support, because then it's like a chain reaction. You get more people that want to support because they see where you're going.
Well, and one thing that I want to show the FFA or whatever, I was a byproduct of that. A lot of my leadership, Mr. Orm, truly love that guy. Phenomenal guy, pours so many hundreds of thousands of hours into our youth. I always seem to talk about this group on my podcast, but I'm part of a mastermind group. It's called Revolt, and it's roofing owners all over the United States, actually going down to a retreat in Gatlinburg here tomorrow, or within this week. Anyways, our leader down there, the guy that started at Hunter Blue, he talks about legacy. Like, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of legacy? Like, how can I impact you today? Like, what did you learn at state convention that you can implement that, could change your life, could change your family's life, could change your kids' life one of these days when you have kids? And maybe it's that spark of something that happened at state convention that me and my wife were honored to support, but like, you just never know like how that's going to affect somebody.
Yeah.
And, and it's awesome just to, like I said, it's easy to give money to a youth organization for me because FFA 4-H really helped mold me who I am, and I've still got a book that Mr. Orm gave me when I graduated. And it's funny because like, now I'm like the quote king and I read all the time. And Mr. Orm's son, Justin, made fun of me one time and he's like, oh my gosh, like you're around my dad too much because like I'm quoting stuff or like, hey, I've got the team. We read a book every month now as a team of leadership or whatever. And, it's going to impact things, so it's always fun just because like me and Emily, we're so legacy focused. Like what can we do to give back to our community? Because this community gives so much to us. Before we hopped on here, we were talking about we're sponsoring a softball team in Connorsville, and he's like, ugh. And I was like, well, we do a lot of work in Connorsville too, but just one thing that I want to bring to attention, like if everybody in FFA, like you're not just going to work in ag, like they're going to get in other careers. And I want people to see that we've built a successful roofing company in Rushville that now has a videographer like Adam, has a marketing, full-time marketing girl, Bobby Ann, Amos, what most people know her by, full-time office staff that, is providing decent jobs at a fair wage in Rushville. Like, there's other FFA members that it's okay if they're not going into ag. Like they can still start a business in construction 100%. Or marketing or whatever, but you're going to look back at your roots. And it's always crazy because there's always a high performer that I meet in the roofing space or in marketing, and you get talking, they were in FFA. Yeah. And it's like, and there's that instant connection of like, there's a trust, like, because they had to do the creed speaking contest or they had to judge livestock.
They had to make themselves vulnerable.
Well, and it's so funny because I look, my wife has come a long ways, but 5-6 years ago, like she was on the first podcast, she would have never done that. I was so used to, since I was in second grade, of judging livestock, and like you try to explain to somebody that wasn't an FFA about judging livestock,
they're like, understand what
you're doing, what with pigs, But I also had to stand in front of the guy that owned them pigs or them cows and tell them why I placed their calves or pigs, whatever, a certain way. Yeah, and it's so beneficial to especially your age and our generation of people. They're always on their phone. Oh yeah, and I run a big business, and a lot of my work is on my phone, but as an employer, you don't know how many people can't look me in the eyes when they come for an interview. And it's like, how are you going to look my customers in the eyes and help them through their roofing issue or their siding issue? So like the qualities that you're learning from a leadership organization, especially like I say, FFA means a lot to me. Sentinel vice president, while I was in FFA, my biggest regret is not doing district, not furthering that. Now that I'm in my 30s, it is what it is. But speaking of state convention, what contest did you participate in?
Like at convention?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to brag a little bit. I competed in freshman extemporaneous speaking and also agri-science. So I was in Division 3 of Food Science and Processing Systems. And I actually was able to win both of those, in addition to helping my team win novice parliamentary procedure, so conduct of chapter meeting. Yep. And then there was a lot of other things that we were rewarded for maybe not winning, but like placing top 4 that we went across stage 4. But those were the 3 state wins that we brought home.
So you had 2, or you were part of all 3 of them then?
I was part of 3 different things that won first.
So what was your speech on?
My extemporaneous speech, they talked about, so in extemporaneous, you have cards laid out that are flipped over. That's right. And then you pull out 3. And I had chosen 3. And then from there, I chose the topic, what part of the agricultural industry is struggling the most. And I talked about the livestock industry, because that's what I'm familiar with. I can really see our struggles more. So I talked about how, like, although we are having less meat in demand here in the United States, there's like a 3.7 increase over the world because of the third world countries that are, you know, developing and can afford meat prices now. So we need to learn how to create meat that's more affordable, that can go longer distances. So the part of that comes with the packaging, as well as like food efficiency and how much space and products you're able to put in an animal and be able to make more of a profit off of it than what you're putting in. And then in addition to that, like carbon emissions, people are just hammering down on the cattle industry right now for carbon emissions, and there's companies that are changing that.
Totally, just don't get me on that. They probably YouTube may take this video down if I get on the political rant.
You know,
but yes,
there are companies like out in Oklahoma that have that vast land. We don't think of it as much here in Indiana because, you know, our grass is really thick.
Right.
But over in Oklahoma, they're like creating these amazing grazing patterns where they're actually able to go carbon negative because they're grazing their cattle in a certain way. And yeah, it takes a lot more land.
Right.
But if that's what it takes to get people to buy your beef, then sometimes that's what you need to do.
And unfortunately, and I didn't really think this was going to go this route, but like I told you when we started, we just kind of let it flow. Unfortunately, there's been too much for too many years. It's like, just, they don't want to buy my food, the beef I raise. Like, who cares? Like, you've got to educate them.
You got to adapt.
It's no difference than us as a contractor. Like, we go and we educate your family of why this roof would work for you, why this roof will not. You know, you've got to, like you said, you've got to adapt. You got to adapt, you know.
If you don't afloat, you're going to sink.
And, you know, and another thing is, like, I get it. There's a craze for vegan and that kind of stuff. However, there's also a massive market, in my opinion, of freezer beefs because one thing that COVID did, like, people like started really watching, like, okay, where's my food coming from and stuff. And actually,
the Orms were able to set up their own food stand here and be successful.
You know, and my dad's raised freezer beefs for as long as I've been alive. And one of my sales rep bought some 2 years ago from me, bought some more last year. And then his freaking freezer went out in his garage and he didn't know. And he found it a week later. And he just asked me last week, he's like, man, when is your dad butchering another steer? He's like, seriously, he's like, this stuff from Kroger's is disgusting.
Yeah, it tastes so different.
Yeah, and I was like, and, you know, actually we grabbed some burgers from Sam and Justin the other day for a company luncheon. And, you know, I just encouraged her. I was like, keep doing this. Like, you, and like,
it's a struggle at first.
Think outside of just Rush County. Like, there's so many people, like, I'm fairly connected in the roofing space. Like, I could probably sell 4 or 5 freezer beefs right now just from people, like, because people are starting to pay attention of, like, where their food is coming from, and they want to support a local family like the Orms or anybody. There's plenty of people, but there's not really anybody that's like, a lot of farmers will sell 4 or 5 or 6. Like, I've told my dad for years, I was like, you should sell more. You should send 0 to producers. Like, you should be able to sell all them. And I get it. It's a convenience of dropping them off at producers, getting a check the next day, and not having to chase 3 or 4 people around to get it, you know. But yeah, like, that's, you know, and that's one thing that you can learn. Like, it's just, you got to adapt, like you said, you know. And fortunately, there's guys like Justin and, you know, younger farmers that are willing to raise the meat, you know, because it is a dying breed like livestock. But so tell me a little bit about the livestock that you're familiar with. I know before we started, you were talking about showing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
So I like to say I have a bit of a mini zoo, like a petting zoo.
Okay. Young McDonald farm?
A little bit. I help out. I'm not super familiar with cows, but I actually recently started showing this year. Well, not officially yet, but I'm working towards it. And I've kind of been around them here and there. When I was younger, you know, before 4-H, my brother showed hogs, so of course I showed hogs with him. And then he decided like he didn't want to keep showing hogs, so he got rid of them because there was a big age gap. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get those back, but I've been around them enough that I know a lot of the general ideas. I actually raise a lot of poultry.
Okay.
So that's not just chickens. I raise like the broilers and the egg layers, but I also have like show birds. And as funny as it sounds, pigeons. I have a lot of pigeons and waterfowl, like ducks and geese and guineas too. And
so what do you do with the pigeons?
The pigeons, you show them. you bring them to shows. And also there's meat variety. There's actually 3 varieties of like 3 big units. We kind of break them up into. So like the sporting, like the racing homers that people fly. It's kind of like horse racing, I think.
Okay.
It's really fun. People make a lot of bets on it. The fancy pigeons, those are like the nice, pretty, like pigeons that you just take to shows. And then there's also like the utility pigeons, like the meat pigeons. So they have.
Well, when I think of pigeons, Adam's gonna have to bleep this. I just think of like that nasty just over everything.
Oh, they do. They're a mess.
When you're like pigeons, I'm like, okay, like
they're really cool. I think it's fun. There's guys that train them, and then they like release them. And they have races, and they release them, and whoever gets back like first wins, and that's how they make like the bets on it. And I also have
betting on a pigeon, huh?
I also have sheep that I raise and show, and then goats.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you show goats. What all do you show at the fair then?
This year?
Yep.
I'll show poultry.
Okay.
I'll show rabbit. I forgot that. I breed and raise rabbits. So poultry, rabbits, beef. Shoot, this is really bad. I need to remember this. There's so many. Goats and sheep.
Okay.
But I've also been around dairy. I did dairy judging for FFA.
Yep.
And that was really fun to be around. Unfortunately, it's just like a long drive to the nearest dairy that, leases out. But,
Yep. Yeah, especially because there used to be a lot of dairies in Rush County.
Especially over in the northern part of the county. But it seems like now it's all in the southern part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Nope. That's crazy because we were talking about I was working for Emma's, parents. And grandpa and grandma, so.
Oh, like they got the Melco over there, Flat Rock, and obviously like the feedlot situations. But that's all in the southern part,
Yep, for sure. So what's coming up? I mean, as a fellow FFA member, I know that FFA week is in February. So like, what fun things are you guys doing? I guess how did fruit sales go? That's another question to ask.
Oh my gosh.
I know that's a huge fundraiser for you guys. So I think there's still some apples around here.
Oh, yeah. The Evercrisp. Yeah. Those are pretty good from Ohio.
Well, it's funny because my wife kept putting a bowl out on the table back there, and like they'd eat them, and then we'd put them back in the refrigerator, and it'd be 3 or 4 days, and nobody'd eat them.
Yeah, you got to keep them out.
Yeah, my wife's like, we got to put the apples back out there. But yeah.
Fruit sales was a big success this year. We actually have 162 active members, I believe, that were active in our fruit sales, which is really, really nice. We always have a big membership, but we also do a lot of big things with our big membership, so obviously that takes money. So we really pushed fruit sales this year, and we are actually able to make the most money we've made in, I think, 5 years, which was really, really exciting because that hasn't happened in a long time. And the money that we use goes directly back to the members. So being able to raise that much money definitely is like a very impactful thing for us to do. FFA week. Oh my gosh. I'm just so excited. I can't disclose a lot because, it's still in the process, but we have an event every single night, and it's so much fun. It's chaotic. It's feral, we like to say. There's something going on every night. There's something for everyone. We like to see at least our member one time throughout, like every member at least one time throughout the week. And we have like dress up days. We have events at school. We have after school activities. We really push that. We have like a community service day. So it's just really like homecoming week for FFA, I like to say. It's all out.
What's the community service, or is that secret that you can't let out?
Well, in recent years, we've worked with More for Kids.
Okay, awesome.
And I think this year, it's not official yet, but I think that's what it's going to be. And it's
Are you still doing the bowling?
I think we haven't done that for a few years, but it's always a fun time with the kids. We bring them in, have a great time. It's very eye-opening for me because last year we did game night, and I didn't grow up in like a really game household. Like I grew up with euchre, and that was about the extent of it. So I was actually learning the games with the kids, which I thought was very entertaining because most of the time, they were better at them than me.
I'm impressed that you know what euchre is at your age, so good for you.
It's the only thing we play at our family.
Well, it's funny because my kids, I don't want my kids raised on a TV or an iPad or whatever. Like, that stuff's okay, but, in the grand scheme of things, and we bought the kids board games, and my son's uber competitive. I have no idea where he gets that from. But like they're playing like Uno.
That's awesome.
You know,
I didn't know how to play Uno.
Yeah.
We were in the hot room for nationals at the Parley, and they were like, "Let's play Uno." I'm like, do I tell them I can't play Uno? But I learned. It's actually not too bad. It's really, really easy. I didn't know.
Can you play poker? I couldn't play poker. You could beat me right now in poker because I wouldn't know, what I'm doing. So, yeah, that's hilarious. So, what is there anything that the community can support you guys during FFA week on, or,
Honestly, it's just, having our back, and obviously money always helps, but we ask more for support and recognition than anything else, like just be supportive of what's happening, what's going on. We do have to spend a little bit more than we have in recent years, obviously because we have a high membership, but also like the price of everything is going up. And something that we really want to do is make all of our activities affordable for all of our members. So trying to figure out how to make it really, really fun, but on a budget is kind of a struggle sometimes when you have to rent out buildings, get food, find activities, buy supplies for all the materials. Like it always pushes us a little bit thin, but that's part of the process. That's part of what makes us the FFA, is like being creative and pushing those limits. So, in a sense, every pro has its con and every con has its pro. So just kind of weaving through that and trying to find the best of every situation is something that we try to do during FFA. So just being supportive and understanding, obviously the more that you look at like our online social media platforms and see what we're doing, I think the more you can see how much we try to provide for the community, and getting that support back just is really, really meaningful.
One thing that I remember, once again, this kind of dates me a little bit, when the first time that the FFA was in Indianapolis, because back in the day that like my sister was in FFA, it was in Kansas City, and then it was Louisville while I was there, and then I think there for a little bit they were flip-flopping it back and forth between Indy and, and Louisville. And there's pros and cons, like you said. There's pros to everything. There's cons back and forth. The good thing about when it was in Indy was there was a chance to take more members because it cost a lot less to get them up there. Yeah. However, one thing that stuck out to me, and I've pretty much, once I graduated college, I've never been in the agricultural field full time. Yeah. And I remember hearing some people that I was working with, they're like, oh my gosh, we were downtown and there's all these future farmers of America. And they're like, the kids were so polite. Yeah. And it's like, that's awesome. Like small world, we were putting a roof on in Speedway in Indy one day a couple of years ago. And it was an Airbnb that a group, I think the kids were from Kentucky. They were in FFA. They were up here for convention. So I start chatting to the advisor, like, hey, fellow,
that's like my dad's favorite thing to do too.
old FFA member here. Like, what are you guys here for? Like, are you in any contests? You guys soil judge, do you livestock judge, whatever. And it was so cool just because like the kids all talked to me, and my sales rep wasn't in FFA, and he was kind of like, them kids were like smart asses. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, they were respectful. And, talked to me and said hi and, all that kind of stuff.
I feel like we learn, we talked about this in English the other day, soft skills. We learn a lot of soft skills, like how to present yourself, how to adapt to the situation. And I think that's all great stuff that FFA teaches. Even if you go in the agricultural industry, you'll never not have a job because of the skills that we've taught you. Right. So
I'm a huge podcast guy. I was listening this morning to Ed Milet's. He's a multi-billionaire, but he was at a roofing conference I went to a couple of years ago. Like, he's got an amazing podcast. Like, and he had Jeff Foxworthy on one time, and then literally I think he had Leanne Rimes on another time. Like, his podcast, and every once in a while I'll be like, oh, what's this person like going to teach me? Then like that's usually the podcast that like hits me the hardest. Oh, yeah. But we were just talking about the whole AI, the artificial intelligence stuff, and like, but there's skills that you've learned in FFA that
it can't AI, replicate.
Yeah, they can't, no. And it's like you said, you got to adapt, like we have to adapt as a roofing company. Like, we're doing a podcast. Like, is that going to make us sell next week? No. However, we have you on there. It's shared through the Rushville FFA.
Reaches more
like
people.
We're building a brand in our local communities. You know. So it's just literally that's what the podcast was about. And I listened to part of it today. And it was talking about, you know, like your skill set. And, you know, and I always, we're huge fans of Dave Ramsey, the financial guy. Yeah. We sponsor a handful of high schools with the personal finance class that Miss Baker teaches here in Rushville. And, you know, they, you look at that and there's so much opportunity. And like, I always go into them classes, me and my wife go in there and talk to them at the end of the semester, answer any questions, kind of reiterate like what they're taught. And it's like, what do you, and you know, I'm the first one to say, hey, college isn't for everyone, and that's okay. Yeah. Like, you know,
which I think is also a good movement we've seen. For so long, it was like, you have to go to college. And now they're starting to step back because, like, there's less blue-collar people. And you're like, we kind of need these people. So I think that's also, like, a really good movement that's been happening recently.
Well, and it's like, you know what? I would have flunked out of a 4-year university.
Yeah.
So I would have flunked out if I tried to go to Purdue or IU. And there's nothing wrong with them schools. No. But now, you know, I always laugh. I've got an environmental engineering degree. My wife has a medical assisting degree. And now we're running a roofing company. You know, but there's this, I always tell students, like, you know, if you want a job, like if you don't know what you want to do, like go get a job. Like if you show up early, do work while you're actually there and care, like you're ahead of 90% of the people. Like I said earlier, like there's too much with the phones of looking down. To be able to look somebody in the eyes, have a conversation like this, you know, you're going to get so much further in life and have opportunities literally knocking at your door. Like, you know, come and intern. Like you, somebody interested in marketing and they've been in FFA and they want to come and intern for a summer. Absolutely. And I understand if they want to go into ag, that's fine. Like there's so much to learn, cross-referencing. And that is one bad thing. You talk about adapting. That, and I see it in the roofing space. Like, you know, go hang out with other business owners that aren't in the roofing space. You know, that's one thing I'm doing with this podcast. I'm going to bring in some business owners that aren't in the roofing space because they have the same problems I have. Employee retention, you know, whatever that is, vendor relationships, it's all the same in the grand scheme of things, you know. So that's why I always say, like, you know, it's okay, like if somebody wants to take a year or two off the college, or there's a lot of places that'll pay for college, because they want to retain you as you know, as an employer.
Like Pioneer does that, don't they?
Yeah. And I mean, you know, if people want to go into nursing, there's plenty of hospitals that do that kind of stuff. So I mean, there's opportunities, and like I said, you know, the bad thing is there's a statistic that says that 80% of people will not be doing what they went to school with 5 years after college.
It's insane. We just read an article about it in English, and the amount of people that don't utilize their degree is absurd. It's so what they kind of got to was it's not necessarily the education you get that matters, it's the skills you learn through that education that matters. And I think that's something that FFA does a great job with. You know, like through our supervised agricultural experience, like our SAEs, I was talking about how I did agri-science, and that's not something in a million years I would have thought about. I am a storyteller. I like telling stories, and I don't know if you know this, but that doesn't really go with science very well, you know. But being able to find an explanation for what I've been trying to answer for a long time, there's some sense of satisfaction that I got from that, you know. And that's not something I would have looked at as a career, but now I'm like, maybe that's not the worst option. Maybe that's something I want to go into. Or we have kids that like create their own baling company, and that's something that they maybe don't want to do like as a career, obviously, but
I did that. I don't recommend that. If my wife was in here, she really would not recommend that. But yes,
the skills they learn, you know, like hard work. How many of those kids, like just general high school population, can you take to go bale hay that will last an entire day?
Absolutely.
And then how many kids from FFA can you take that can? It's a mind over matter thing. Like physically, it is demanding, but they just know how much more work it takes. So I think that you can just see the payoff, the amount of success that those kids that were in FFA can have. And I think that that's amazing.
Well, and I mean, absolutely. And it's the rural community. It's the, you know, it's the work ethic that's, you know, that's driven into these kids. And, you know, anybody knows my dad knows that he was a hard ass on me. Like, probably too much. Yeah. However, like, he beat two things in my head. work hard and be honest. Like, how much different would this world be
if
everybody worked hard and was honest? Not waiting for a government handout, not being envious of somebody else's success, but truly,
it wouldn't really
like,
be recognizable.
Yeah. It's like, and it's so sad because if you work hard and you're honest, once again, you're ahead of 90% of the people, you know. And it's just, you know, like you said that, like I used to bale hay, like, you know, you have to, some days you got to start at 6 o'clock in the morning, unload hay from the day before, then go rake hay, then go bale hay until it's dark, and then unload more hay. Like, you have to be persistent. You got to just get up and do it. And
because it doesn't wait. It's not something that can hold on till the next day.
Right. And, you know, one thing that baling hay would teach anybody who wants to be in business is, like, days go wrong. Like, you have rain showers.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't really know why, but baling hay and roofing, like...
Weird association.
Well, and it's funny because it's like you need dry, sunny days to do both.
Yeah.
I always say the good thing about roofing is if it rained yesterday, I could roof today. If it rained yesterday, I can't bale the hay that was cut down. You know, but, you know, looking back, like, it's the, like you said, the SAE, like you said, you know, supervised agriculture experience. It's a job, you know, or it's whatever you're working on that you work with your FFA advisor, that kind of stuff, that, you know, it teaches you a profit and loss statement that a lot of people don't understand, you know. And once again, especially going into a business, like, there's days, like the month of January, I don't make a net profit because I'm paying the help. It's like, it's January. We're not putting a bunch of roofs on, you know, but it's the ebb and flow of things. Like, I better be making a net profit in June or we have a problem, you know, for the year. So
like a big thing with farmers too, because obviously they have to take out a big loan before every season to get everything done, and then they have to pay it off. So it's like accountability too, I think, is a really big thing. And that's a skill we learn in FFA all the time, you know, just be there, show up, do your job, and don't just go out and spend everything all the time. Like, know time management and, like, know when you can do something and when you need to hold off a little bit. And that's something we see with a lot of our, like, for me, example, I balance a lot of competitions at the same time. I'm an honor student and I also do track. So all of that combined, trying to figure out how to balance that and still have a life outside of those 3 activities is definitely a job. And before, I didn't really, like, this is going to sound really sad, I didn't know how to have that balance. I always felt stressed. I always felt overwhelmed. But FFA has allowed me to figure out how to have that balance. And I think that's one of the best things. If you're thinking about any competition in FFA, extemporaneous, if you're considering anything, because it taught me how to balance out your time. I mean, you only have 30 minutes and you have to make an entire speech in 30 minutes. So there has to be background work behind all of that, building up to that point. But during that point, you also have to know, like, okay, what do I need to have done? And what do I want done? And then you have to leave time to rehearse that. You can't just walk in never doing anything, you know?
Right.
And so that's one of the best skills, I think.
But also, you got time to rehearse, but you also just got to go do it.
Yeah.
Because as a business owner, there's a million things thrown at me every day that, I could kind of work on this and kind of work on that, but I've got to prioritize, like, what has to get done. In January, like, it's a lot of processes and how we're going to attack this next year, you know. However, in June, you better have that stuff figured out, you know. So, you know, like I said, like, FFA 4-H, like, you know, if somebody's wanting to come and work for me and they talk about that, like, it's such a positive thing because I've known what they've been through, you know. And, you know, sports, same thing, like, they've had to show up, you know. College, back when I went to school, the one thing that they always preached to us was, you know, follow through with that college commitment. Like, that meant more on a resume 20 years ago, 15 years ago, of, like, hey, he started college and he finished in 2 years. That's how long it was supposed to take him, you know, or he finished in 4 years because it was a bachelor's degree, whatever it was, like, that they followed through and got it done. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with having to work and take a little extra time to get through college. There's nothing wrong with that either. But it's like, you know, did they go to college? They go to college, or did they go to college to party? And I get some people go to college to party, then they eventually grow up sooner than later. But yeah, I mean, just the FFA, there's so much value in that, you know, fortunately our community does a pretty good job at noticing that. But, you know, there's still some schools that don't even have FFA chapters, and it's sad because of, you know, there's a lot of good that's went through Mr. Orm's classes over the years. A lot of people, respect him, and just the amount of impact that he's had on lives. And I know now, Miss Wagner.
Oh yeah.
She, she's in there. She came in after I left, but Mr. Shanahan was still there when I was there, and and it's changed. Like I remember when I was in school, there was still small engines class. There was, ag mechanics.
It's changed, and part of that is because of the WCC program.
Yep.
So when we made it available for students to have that specialized class, instead of having a specialized class for each of those individual things like welding and diesel mechanics, it's all under one class now. So we don't take away that opportunity that students are already learning. So that comes back to adapting. You got to adapt to what's being gone. And it's funny you mention the other teacher that you had, because we still have that impact from him years down the line.
Yep.
Even though I've never met him, never had him as a teacher, I know the impact he made on our FFA chapter and the legacy that he has left.
Yep.
So that's kind of like a full circle. And Mr. Brashper, hasn't been there for a very long time. Mr. Orm was actually my mom's teacher for 2 years in high school. And it's a full circle moment because everyone knows him. Everyone in the community knows him. He does so much. Even if you don't take an ag class, you know who Mr. Orm is.
Exactly.
And I think that's something really unique to our chapter, is just the impact and legacy and traditions that we uphold within our chapter has been able to allow us to reach out to more students that otherwise wouldn't think about it. One of my friends, she lives in town, and I may or may not have pushed her into FFA a little bit. We're in band together in junior high. I was like, come on, just do it. It's going to be so much fun. She's like, no, I've never been on a farm. I don't want to be on a farm. I'm like, just listen, just do it. And, she's on a nationally competing team for FFA as a freshman. How does that happen, So it just, the outreach that we have at our chapter is astonishing, and that just doesn't happen, Like Knightstown, it's a very comparably sized school to Rushville, I think. And their chapter is just, it's growing still. And so being able to help them out and them lean on us a little bit and us lean on them and building up that program, and not, obviously there's always rivals, but it's not the same as sports, You don't help out another sports team.
Yeah, but that's funny that you would say that, because that is that Revolt Mastermind that I'm part of. And there's 2 other guys that are in Indiana that are in that group, and we would genuinely help each other.
Yeah.
Because we just see that, especially in the contracting space, there's so many crappy ones out there that there's plenty of work for the good ones. And it's kind of cool, because I kind of thought when you were talking of a couple things, and one thing is Mr. Orm's dedication to Rushville FFA. I mean, he's been so consistent.
It's more than a full-time job.
For decades.
Yeah.
So if I'm consistent in running a roofing company for the next 4 decades, what kind of impact can I have? Whatever your chosen field is, if you're just, you're dedicated. And, I always tell people that we have a roofing company, but I look at it as more of a leadership company that we happen to do roofing, siding, and gutters. I tell my team every week, I want you to leave every Friday a better person.
Oh, yeah.
Not that you're a bad person when you come in here, but if you're a mom,
there's
you're
always
a dad.
Improvements.
There's I want people to be man, working there has made you a better person, because a better community member. Are they active in their church, or do they coach youth sports or whatever like that? There's so much opportunity out there, and like I said, just that's one thing that kind of hit me when you're talking about we talk about legacy and Revolt, where Mr. Orm's legacy is going to live in this community forever.
Yeah.
And and it's crazy because I run into other FFA advisors or stuff like that, or people in Indy all the time, that they have some kind of connection to Rushville or the FFA or something like that.
And it's hilarious because we're not a big town.
Right. But once again, it's just his dedication, and the consistency. That's another thing that, we've lost the society of being consistent. It's shiny object. I'm an entrepreneur. Squirrel, I'm looking. I need to focus on what I'm focused on. But just once again, the work ethic, the honesty, and another thing I think we miss as a country is the consistency, because it's you know what, this didn't work out, who cares? Kind of like marriages. I was meeting with a lady that said she's getting ready to celebrate her 35th year wedding. I'm like, congratulations. I've been married 12 years and or almost 12 years. And holy cow, I don't know how my wife hasn't killed me yet, So, but it's just, it goes back to consistency and, like legacy, focus on legacy. Like, how can you impact, like, the energy that you bring to the FFA, to our community, like you're impacting people, like that young lady that was on a national team her freshman year.
Yeah.
Like you had to be bold. You had to step out and encourage her. I had to be bold, and I had to step out and start this business almost 5 years ago with me and my wife and 3 extremely young kids. And that was our only income. Now we've got a team. Now, last week we were in Cancun. Me and my wife were for a week. Like, it was awesome because we got a team here running. The Facebook posts were still getting made. Adam was working. The sales teams were still running the appointments, But it took 5 years ago starting that, taking a leap of faith. Like you said, you reach out, your energy, people's going to be attracted to your positive energy. Like, well, maybe I don't, maybe I don't want to be an FFA, but man, maybe I want to be around Jenna because she's so freaking fun,
That's something that we talk about when we walk into contests too. Like, and when you're competing in Parley, it doesn't matter what you do it with confidence.
Yes.
Do it like that is right. Even if you notice that you made a mistake.
Well, and and just be positive.
Yeah.
And like look
Carry
at
yourself.
the bright side. Like, we can watch the news and get plenty of negative stuff and make you depressed, and the world's coming to an end, and I need a Democrat to save me. No, I need a Republican to save me. No, you need to save yourself. Like, focus.
No one's gonna come and do it for you.
Yeah. The government, I don't care what side. They're all part of the same thing. So they're looking out for themselves. So it's just it's refreshing to sit down with a young lady like you and just your energy for the FFA, for the community, because you're making an impact right now. And you're going to continue to make an impact. And you know what? It may be in Rushville in a few years. It may be somewhere else. It may be 4 states away, but you're leaving a legacy. You're building a legacy at such a young age. And that's one thing that I think our youth continues to need to hear is like what you're doing now is important, and you're changing lives because, you say that. And there's a girl that I can think of that was a year younger than me in school. She grew up in town, grew up right down the road from our office. And now she works, she worked at Farm Credit for several years, and I believe she's at another ag-based bank. And, she didn't know anything about a farm before she joined FFA. And it's funny you're talking about all the girls. When I was at FFA, we were starting to get a lot more girls joining than boys. And our officer team always had a few girls, but always had some guys, on the officer team. It was probably actually a little heavy for girls even then, all them years ago. And Brody will be
next year.
My Brody will be wearing a wig just to fit in with the girls. He's going to hate me when he sees this, but I'll make sure. I'll make sure he sees that clip. But no, it's exciting to see the FFA chapter grow because there was nowhere near 162 when I was in school, and it's just. Like I said, the impact of what you kids are doing. Like I said, I spent many a Saturdays judging livestock, soils judging, and it's always fun to see FFA kids give back. Like once you get out of school, you'll be giving back, you'll be coming back, you'll be helping out. And I encourage that just because.
Like Mason Gordon comes in all the time to help with stuff. Like he was judging my Creed speaking like my freshman year. And he's not been an FFA for a long time, but it impacted him so much. The organization did so much for him that he feels a need to come back and help us. Right. And it's not like he has to. It's just, and like you're talking about how much FFA helped you, and you're not obligated to help us, but you feel obligated to a degree because of the lessons that you learned through our organization.
Well, and it's just, you never know, like that one kid that you can impact, like who are you impacting? Like, what are they going to do to impact this world? Like maybe there's somebody in our FFA chapter right now going to cure cancer. So, and maybe they didn't have the funds to go to state convention, but that put a spark in them,
For sure.
And I always look back like, man, I wish I would have appreciated like national convention more, like the speakers. Now that I'm a leadership nerd, and I try to
growing into
taking
a little orm yourself.
No, I hope not. And no, I love you, Miss Yorm. But, you know, I'm just saying, like, you know, now I take my team to conferences.
Yeah.
I pay for my entire team to go to conference to learn leadership nuggets, you know, and be around guys like John Maxwell, Greg Rochelle. You know, it was funny. I don't know why I remember this. At one of the national conventions I went to, Joe Theismann was there. He was an NFL quarterback, but his actual real name was Theismann. But, I mean, this was, you know, 40, 50 years ago, whenever it was. National convention wasn't that long ago. It was when he was playing football. But they said they had him change his name because they said it would sound better on air. And that was crazy because he told that story, you know, and I remember he dropped back and he freaking threw a football out in the stand. I have no idea who caught it, but I remember
you just
that.
remember it.
But it's like, you know, like I said, the commitment to that our community has, our FFA, you know, they do a lot of great things, you know, and it goes back to the leadership of Mr. Orm. And, you know, like we were talking before we went on air, like I tried to get him here and he's like, no, I want to have Jenna reach out to you. And I was like, all right, but I still want you, Mr. Orm, to come on sometime. And it's more for me to show him the appreciation and respect because he was a big part of, you know, what this is.
Absolutely.
And, you know, there's so many cool things like that. So when we wrap up, you got any final thoughts or, you know, ways that, you know, we can support you guys, anything like that?
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about FFA because it's changed my life. As cheesy as that sounds, it really has, you know. Like I remember being in middle school and being that kid in the back of the class that like doesn't want to do a presentation. I'm not walking up to the front of the classroom, not doing it. And now I'm like doing a podcast. I can look you in the eyes. That's crazy. Like I couldn't do that a few years ago. So it's the little skills that lead to big things that we try to teach, and creating successful leaderships. Like in our FFA motto, it talks about premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. And I think we really hit on all three of those things today, because that's what we value as an organization. I think you can see that imprinted in each and every one of our members. Like their values and morals relate back to the morals of our organization because they've just been around it and they see how much of a positive impact it can make.
That's crazy that you say that, because I was just thinking like we're big on our core values at our business, and one of them is integrity, one of them is generosity, one of them is drive. Now I'm freaking totally losing my mind here. So integrity, drive, generosity, compassion. Like, you know, we got to be compassionate. Like as a business owner, like I've got to get productivity out of my guys, but I've also got to love on them. And I'm going to put Adam on the spot and ask
growth.
Duh. So like, but you know, that aligns a lot with the FFA, and it just dawned on me. But like, I always tell people when they come here to interview, like them core values, like we mean them. Like we will have conversations of like, hey, I think you need to be a little more compassion with the roofing crew, because they were roofing all day in 90-degree weather. Like I understand they left a little trash on the ground, but you know what I mean? Like show that compassion. But I also want to drive to get better. Yeah. Like, you know, growth, you know, whatever, you know, we got to grow. You're either dying or growing, you know, and there's no in between. So thank you seriously so much for coming in. You did awesome. I appreciate it. I just want to, you know, encourage anybody that's on the fence to join FFA. If you want to help support these guys, reach out. Seriously, your money will not go wasted. Next year when they do the FFA fruit, we'll probably have you guys back on and do a podcast to help maybe you guys strum some more fruit business up, because that is your fundraiser. And, you know, just, you know, continue to keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you. And guys, this is it's going to wrap up our podcast. And like I said, any way you can help this FFA, if you're a kid watching this, you want to join. If you're a parent watching this and you're kind of nudging your kid, reach out to me, reach out to Jenna or anybody in the FFA, and, you know, give them a shot. Thank you, ma'am.